Centuries ago, ancient texts buried in forgotten corners of Earth's oldest libraries had warned of an approaching galactic tide, a vast assembly of civilizations that measured strength and sheer firepower in conquest rather than diplomacy. Yet those warnings were dismissed as myths and allegories, the words of prophets and scholars who had long since passed into obscurity, leaving humanity unaware of the subtle preparations that had quietly been underway beneath the surface of ordinary life, as scientists, engineers, and visionaries worked in hidden networks to develop technologies that were centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. And when the first probes arrived in the outer solar system, sleek and foreign, their intentions unreadable, humans greeted them with cautious curiosity rather than fear, unaware that the same entities that had ignored the warnings were now scouting for weakness and vulnerability, calculating whether the Earth could be harvested for resources or neutralized as a potential threat. And the aliens were quick to label humanity as primitive, their scanners interpreting centuries-old infrastructure as signs of stagnation, their communications dripping with condescension and assumptions of superiority. Yet humans observed them with sharp intelligence, recognizing patterns, detecting the subtle ways the alien ships moved and scanned, the way their weapons were calibrated for large-scale planetary bombardment, but lacked precision for small-scale adaptive engagements. And while diplomat convened at hastily assembled space stations, the alien coalition assumed that humans would beg for alliances or surrender technologies in exchange for survival, not knowing that centuries of survival on a volatile planet had honed human instincts for improvisation, resilience, and ingenuity. And as the first formal ultimatum was transmitted across interstellar channels, demanding submission or annihilation, humanity's leaders quietly initiated protocols never meant to be revealed until the moment was dire, protocols that involved shifting planetary defenses, activating stealth fleets hidden beneath ice caps and oceanic trenches, mobilizing autonomous drones capable of manipulating gravitational fields, and synchronizing energy grids that could redirect solar output into precision weapons, all while maintaining the appearance of compliance and calm, a facade that lured the alien delegates into a false sense of control, unaware that every miscalculation, every assumption of weakness, was catalogued and analyzed by humans who understood not just technology, but strategy, psychology, and the value of patience. And then came the first act that would begin to reveal the truth. A mining convoy near Saturn was intercepted by what the aliens expected to be an unarmed civilian vessel, only to have it maneuver with impossible agility, evading the interception drones and activating countermeasures that disabled the enemy ships, without loss of human life. And the news of this encounter spread to the galactic communications channels like wildfire, sparking confusion and doubt among alien strategists who had believed in their invincibility, while humanity scientists observed the reactions, noting the exact ways fear manifested in alien behavior, their hesitation, and the subtle misalignments in fleet coordination. And as weeks passed, humanity continued to demonstrate capabilities that no one had predicted, intercepting surveillance probes, rerouting communications, and neutralizing minor skirmishes in ways that seemed almost supernatural to the observers. And yet, the humans made no formal declaration of war, no hasty aggression, allowing the aliens to think they remained docile, their restraint a tool as sharp as any weapon, for they understood the power of anticipation, deception, and timing, and deep within Earth's orbit, command centers buzzed with activity as humanity prepared the first deliberate maneuver, one that would simultaneously protect their home, warn the galaxy of their underestimated capabilities, and set in motion a chain of events that would force every species that had once scoffed at Earth to reconsider not only their tactics, but the very assumption that humans could be controlled, coerced, or ignored. And it was in this tense, fragile balance between perception and reality that the first dominoes of interstellar reckoning began to fall, the ancient warning, finally vindicated, and humanity poised to claim its place not as a footnote, but as a decisive force that would determine the fate of worlds. As the weeks stretched into months, humanity's subtle demonstrations of power evolved into coordinated, strategic operations that left alien commanders scrambling to understand the extent of Earth's hidden capabilities. And while the galaxy's coalition had convened in sleek war councils, debating whether to sanction a preemptive strike or attempt negotiation, humans operated with a level of foresight that no alien mind could predict, silently reshaping orbital trajectories to optimize energy, collection from solar flares, launching reconnaissance drones cloaked in gravitational shadows that could infiltrate the deepest corners of enemy stations without detection, and activating deep space relays capable of projecting information across light years almost instantaneously, allowing commanders on Earth to anticipate moves before they occurred. And yet humans maintain the illusion of being reactive rather than proactive, allowing the aliens to grow overconfident, misreading every maneuver as desperation or coincidence, while the civilians on Earth, unaware of the cosmic chessboard unfolding above them, went about their lives, schools, research labs, and cities functioning normally, providing a cover of mundane routine that contrasted sharply with the frenetic precision occurring behind the scenes. And when the first fleet of alien warships approached the outer rim of the solar system under pretense of observation, expecting to encounter primitive defense arrays and minimal resistance, they were met with electromagnetic pulses that rendered their sensors unreliable, gravitational distortions that caused navigation systems to fail, and coordinated bursts of energy that disabled weaponry without harming life, leaving alien captains and admirals in a state of disbelief, frantically attempting to understand why their technological superiority was meaningless against humans who, by all conventional metrics, should have been annihilated in the opening moments of any engagement. And as internal communication channels lit up with reports of these inexplicable phenomena, a divide began to form among alien leadership, some advocating retreat to regroup and study humanity, others arguing for immediate, overwhelming retaliation. And in the midst of this confusion, humans initiated their first open demonstration, dispatching a fleet composed of modular vessels capable of reconfiguring weapons, shields, and propulsion in real time, appearing to emerged from nowhere in the asteroid belt, encircling the alien contingent with precision that left even the most seasoned commanders questioning their own senses and intelligence, while Earth's leaders watched from the command center, calculating the psychological impact, knowing that demonstrating this level of coordination and ingenuity would not just protect the planet, but send a message to the galaxy that underestimating humans came with consequences far greater than anyone had imagined. And as the aliens finally grasped that every apparent coincidence had been planned, every human maneuver a calculated test, panic began to ripple through the ranks, with some species attempting to communicate, seeking terms and explanations, only to be met with calm, deliberate responses that emphasized caution, diplomacy, and the idea that further aggression would not be tolerated. And in that moment, the first seeds of fear were sown, fear not born from hatred, but from respect tempered with awe, as humanity's capacity for patience, intelligence, and restraint revealed that the ancient warnings had not been hyperbole, that Earth had been quietly preparing for an age when the galaxy would learn too late that humans were not a species to be trifled with, and every move, every calculated reveal, every demonstration of power served to remind the cosmos that humanity had waited, watched, and learned, and now the fate of worlds would hinge on whether those who had ignored the ancient warning would continue to miscalculate or acknowledge that Earth's defenders were not just protecting their planet, but rewriting the rules of interstellar engagement itself. The alien coalition, shaken but unwilling to admit defeat, escalated their efforts, deploying additional fleets toward the inner solar system with the intent of overwhelming those defenses, yet each move was anticipated with uncanny precision, as humans utilized a combination of predictive algorithms, behavioral analysis of alien command patterns, and decades of covert experimentation to craft countermeasures that neutralize the newcomers without unnecessary destruction, striking it weak, points the aliens didn't even realize they had. And as larger vessels maneuvered into formation, expecting to intimidate or coerce, humans launched decoy swarms of autonomous craft that mimic fleet formations, confusing sensors and causing hesitation in enemy ranks, while simultaneous disruptions of communication sowed mistrust between allied species, with commanders accusing one another of sabotage or incompetence. And throughout these maneuvers, humans maintained strict discipline, coordinating across orbital stations, hidden relays, and mobile command platforms with seamless synchronization that left alien observers stunned at the level of organization that had been previously dismissed as impossible for an ostensibly primitive species. And on Earth, civilian scientists and engineers monitored energy fluxes, propulsion anomalies, and gravitational manipulations with the precision of surgeons, ensuring that each countermeasure inflicted maximum strategic impact while preserving the lives of all sentient beings involved. And as months of tension and maneuvering unfolded, humans revealed one of their most astonishing capabilities, the ability to manipulate subspace conduits to redirect attacks before they could reach their targets, a feat that caused entire sections of enemy fleets to misfire against one another, creating chaos without a single human casualty. And as alien leaders convened in desperation, arguing over how to respond to a species that seemed to operate on an entirely different plane of tactical reasoning, humanity initiated targeted rescue operations for the colonies and species previously threatened or oppressed by the coalition, a move that simultaneously demonstrated moral superiority and strategic cunning, forcing the aliens to witness firsthand that humans were not only capable of defense but also of benevolent intervention on a scale that made conquest meaningless. And as the first public broadcast of these actions reached the wider galactic audience, whispers of a species long underestimated spread like wildfire, shaking the confidence of civilizations that had once treated humanity as inconsequential, and the aliens, already fatigued by failed attacks and miscalculations, began to confront a terrifying realization. Every assumption about humanity's limitations had been wrong. Every strategy they had relied upon rendered ineffective by a combination of ingenuity, resilience, and ethical consideration that alien minds struggled to comprehend. And within Earth's orbital command hubs, leaders calculated the next series of moves with quiet intensity, knowing that the moment for total revelation was approaching, that the galaxy had been granted a glimpse of humanity's full potential. Yet the final, decisive display had yet to unfold, a display that would irrevocably shift power dynamics and ensure that the ancient warning, long ignored, was not only acknowledged but feared, as every decision, every maneuver, every act of deliberate precision served to illustrate that the fate of worlds was no longer subject to conjecture, but firmly in the hands of humans whose patience, preparation, and moral clarity had transformed them from a seemingly insignificant species into the ultimate arbiter of galactic order. By the time humanity revealed the next phase of their plan, the alien coalition was already fractured, suspicion and fear rippling through every command structure. A species that had once presented a united front now hesitated, questioning each other's motives and interpreting minor delays as acts of sabotage, while humans, operating from a network of hidden command hubs both on Earth and in orbit, coordinated a series of maneuvers that showcased not just technological superiority but psychological mastery, deliberately exploiting coalitions' overconfidence and reliance on brute force. And as alien vessels entered the asteroid belt near Jupiter, expecting an easy sweep through what they assumed were undefended regions, they were confronted with an array of human-deployed drones capable of gravitational manipulation, creating false mass concentrations that caused ships to collide or misalign. And simultaneously, electromagnetic pulses selectively disabled navigation systems while leaving life support fully functional, a calculated demonstration that humans could inflict chaos without unnecessary loss of life. And as panic spread among alien crews, human negotiators initiated encrypted communications, offering terms that emphasized restraint and the opportunity to de-escalate, knowing full well that the combination of fear, confusion, and or would have a far greater effect than outright aggression. And while the coalition debated whether to attack or withdraw, humanity deployed a second, even more audacious tactic. Entire sections of the fleet repositioned through previously concealed subspace corridors, appearing behind alien lines in perfect synchronization, simultaneously severing supply routes, communications, and tactical coordination, a move that left alien admirals scrambling, realizing too late that their assumptions about distance, speed, and strategic advantage were fundamentally flawed when faced with humans who thought in multiple dimensions of time, space, and probability. And in the midst of this orchestrated chaos, human engineers activated planetary defense systems capable of projecting energy shields and tactical barriers that rendered entire battle zones effectively inaccessible to enemy fire, creating corridors for evacuation, reinforcement, and targeted strikes. All while civilians on Earth remained largely unaware of the cosmic battle being waged above their heads, living their daily lives as though nothing had changed, a testament to humanity's ability to operate under pressure with both secrecy and efficiency. And as weeks turned into months, the alien coalition began to experience a slow, insidious realization. Every attack they had launched, every threat they had issued, every assumption of human inferiority had been systematically dismantled, not just through technology but through patience, strategy, and an unshakable ethical framework that humans wielded as deftly as any weapon. And As whispers of humanity's actions reached other civilizations across the galaxy, reports emerged of entire star systems choosing to align with Earth voluntarily, seeking protection from a species whose capabilities and moral clarity now defined the standard for interstellar engagement, and as Earth's leaders prepared for the decisive demonstration that would finally force the coalition to acknowledge human dominance. They understood that the ancient warning had served its purpose. The galaxy would no longer underestimate humanity, and the fate of countless worlds would now be determined not by intimidation, coercion, or fear of retaliation, but by the deliberate, measured, and overwhelming brilliance of a species long underestimated, whose restraint was only matched by the precision and decisiveness of its response, ensuring that history would remember this era as a moment when humanity stepped fully into its role as the ultimate arbiter of galactic order. The alien coalition, now reeling from months of calculated human maneuvers, faced an unprecedented dilemma. Every attempt to regain initiative was met with precision countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their thought processes, and as fleet after fleet hesitated at the edge of the solar system, human strategists implemented a multi-layered plan designed not merely to repel aggression, but to fundamentally alter the political and military landscape of the galaxy, first by securing vulnerable colonies and species that had previously been under alien dominion, sending human envoys and defense teams to establish rapid response networks capable of neutralizing threats without lethal force, and simultaneously, Earth deployed the first wave of adaptive assault craft, modular ships able to shift between offensive and defensive roles in real time, striking only when necessary to demonstrate capability while minimizing casualties. And as the coalition observed these actions, confusion turned to panic. For every maneuver humans executed carried layers of tactical depth. What appeared to be a simple defensive strike doubled as a psychological operation, a display of technology designed to force alien commanders to question not just their assumptions about human capability, but their entire approach to interstellar conflict. And within the command centers on Earth, leaders coordinated with scientists who had spent decades analyzing alien behavioral patterns, predicting the moment each species would react, misstep, or falter, and then leveraging that insight to create cascading effects that would ripple through fleets, colonies, and councils alike, while diplomat prepared messages that conveyed both restraint and resolve, making it clear that humans would act decisively when provoked, yet offered a pathway to reconciliation for those willing to acknowledge the errors of their previous underestimation. And as the first joint operations with allied species commenced, humans demonstrated not just superiority in technology and strategy, but in ethics and leadership, rescuing entire worlds from starvation, ecological collapse, and occupation, a feat that contrasted starkly with the coalition's reliance on fear and coercion, prompting whispers across star systems that humanity was not only a military power but a guardian of stability. And these actions forced alien leaders into an impossible calculus, realizing that continued hostility would not only fail, but risk the permanent loss of influence across the galaxy. And as Earth's fleets encircled the inner systems, blocking supply lines and establishing secure communication relays for allied species, the coalition fractured completely, factions turning on one another, unable to coordinate effectively under pressure. And in the midst of this orchestrated chaos, humanity initiated the next phase, a series of targeted demonstrations of absolute strategic mastery, including disabling weapon platforms without destruction, rerouting energy flows to demonstrate control over planetary systems, and projecting force in a way that allowed observation without annihilation, each action carefully designed to instill awe and fear simultaneously. And through it all, humans maintained their composure, their patience, and their moral clarity, proving to the galaxy that strength did not require cruelty, that intelligence paired with restraint was more devastating than brute force. And as alien leaders began to send delegations seeking terms, hoping to salvage their remaining power, humanity understood that the ancient warning had finally been acknowledged, that centuries of preparation, foresight, and quiet innovation had culminated in a moment when the fate of countless worlds rested not in the hands of those who relied on intimidation, but in the deliberate, ethical, and overwhelming judgment of humans who had long been underestimated. And as the first formal negotiations commenced under conditions dictated entirely by Earth, the galaxy began to recognize that humanity's rise was not just a turning point in warfare or diplomacy, but the irrevocable reordering of interstellar relations, a demonstration that a species once dismissed could now define the destiny of worlds with precision, honor, and unmatched brilliance. By the time humanity moved into the next phase, the alien coalition was no longer capable of unified action, their fleet scattered, their councils paralyzed by internal distrust, and humans, fully aware of the psychological leverage they now held, began a series of operations designed to cement their dominance while minimizing unnecessary destruction, deploying orbital shields around key systems to demonstrate control, using precision energy pulses to disable hostile warships temporarily, and simultaneously orchestrating evacuations for vulnerable populations that had once lived under alien oppression, a display of capability, restraint, and moral authority that left observers across the galaxy in awe and disbelief, while back on Earth, command centers hummed with activity as scientists and strategists monitored every reaction, predicting how each species would respond to successive demonstrations of human ingenuity, and when a rogue faction attempted a desperate strike against a critical communication hub, humans countered with a combination of predictive targeting and autonomous defensive drones that neutralized the threat without harming any lives, further reinforcing the lesson that aggression against humanity was futile, and as reports of these precise interventions spread, entire sectors of the galaxy began to surrender voluntarily or seek alliance, recognizing that resisting humans was no longer a matter of honor or survival, but sheer futility, and even those leaders who had once scoffed at Earth's warnings now faced the humbling realization that centuries of preparation, innovation, and observation had been designed not for immediate domination, but for the perfect moment to demonstrate total strategic mastery, and as human fleets conducted synchronized displays of orbital manipulation, subspace communication, and defensive precision, alien commanders began to grasp the full scale of their miscalculation. Humanity was not merely a rising power, it was a species capable of shaping the very structure of galactic politics, enforcing peace through competence rather than fear, and rescuing worlds while simultaneously neutralizing threats in ways that seemed almost supernatural. And in the midst of this unparalleled display, humans initiated open dialogue with all surviving alien factions, dictating terms that emphasized ethical governance, collective security, and technological oversight, making it clear that any future aggression would be met with overwhelming, precise, and unavoidable consequences, while those who submitted willingly were offered partnership, training, and protection, creating a coalition not through coercion but through respect for competence. And as centuries-old galactic systems realized that the humans they had underestimated were now arbiters of order, fear turned into reluctant admiration, and admiration into cautious alliance, with even the most aggressive species acknowledging that Earth's defenders were not motivated by conquest or vengeance, but by responsibility, foresight, and a code of conduct that combined intellect, strategy, and morality. And as humans continued to establish protective networks, secure communication grids, and systems of conflict resolution across the galaxy, it became indisputably clear that the ancient warning had been not only valid but understated, that ignoring it had led to near-catastrophic errors, and that humanity, once dismissed as a primitive species on a small, fragile planet, had now assumed a role that would determine the fate of countless civilizations, proving to all that restraint coupled with overwhelming capability was a force more powerful than any weapon. And in that moment, the galaxy understood that the age of humans had arrived, not with violence, but with brilliance, patience, and an unassailable authority that ensured the survival, security, and prosperity of worlds under their watch. With the alien coalition broken, their fleet scattered, and their political structures irrevocably shaken, humanity moved from demonstration to governance, establishing frameworks that ensured stability across star systems while reinforcing the lesson that underestimating humans was a grave error. And as Earth's leaders convened with representatives from allied species, they crafted agreements that combined mutual protection, technological oversight, and coordinated development, creating a network of interstellar security that balanced power without oppression, while simultaneously continuing to rescue colonies still recovering from prior neglect or aggression, showing that humanity's influence was defined not by conquest but by competence, morality, and foresight. And as reports of these actions reached the remaining factions of the coalition, alien leaders who had once approached Earth with arrogance now bowed to pragmatism, acknowledging the human strategic brilliance, their unmatched ability to predict and counter every move, and their ethical approach to conflict that elevated negotiation and protection over destruction. And within months, former adversaries had integrated into the new order voluntarily, contributing resources, knowledge, and talent while respecting the authority of humanity as the central arbiter of interstellar relations and as human diplomats, strategists, and scientists continue to refine systems for early warning, adaptive defense, and cooperative development. It became evident that the ancient warning had been a prescient guide, the consequences of ignoring it now etched into the collective memory of the galaxy, and humans, once underestimated, now define the standards of power, responsibility, and foresight, their patience, restraint, and brilliance serving as a template for ethical dominance. While civilizations across the stars came to understand that true strength lay not merely in firepower or intimidation, but in preparation, intelligence, and moral clarity, and as centuries of careful planning culminated in a stable, flourishing network of interstellar alliances, the galaxy recognized that humanity had earned its place as both protector and leader, a species whose underestimated resilience and ingenuity had decisively shaped the fate of countless worlds. And in that final moment, as fleets rested, colonies rebuilt, and leaders reflected on the errors of the past, the message was clear: those who ignored the ancient warning had paid the price. Those who acknowledged it had prospered, and humanity, having revealed its full capability, would forever be the ultimate arbiter of galactic destiny, ensuring that the galaxy understood with undeniable clarity that from that point onward, no species would ever dare underestimate the humans again, for the fate of worlds had been decisively, irrevocably, and wisely placed in their hands.